Hello to you, news, war, spirituality, this time hosting with us all the way from Sydney, Australia, Charlie Hogg from Brahma Kumaris. Hello to you, Charlie.
Hello, Nathaniel. It's really lovely to be with you.
Thank you so much for your kind words. We are here throughout the missiles from Lebanon, from Gaza, Khan Yunis, the southern part of Israel. You're listening, hearing the news, connected. If you could reflect, what is happening in your heart, Charlie?
You know, Nathaniel, I think when I first heard about October the 7th and events since then, there was a deep sadness, I would say, because I find it so hard to understand how human beings can treat human beings like this. It's abhorrent behavior. And so that really deep sadness that returns sometimes when we hear of these events. But I think perhaps at the moment, I feel a real compassion for the victims and even those who are doing the crimes, if we can say. And I once, Nathaniel, attended a talk by the Dalai Lama here in Sydney. And I do think that that, the Dalai Lama is Tibetan and China has occupied Tibet. And there has been some horrific crimes against the Tibetan people. And during this talk, at the end of the talk, they asked for questions. And one of the people who asked a question was a young Chinese man. And this young Chinese man said to the Dalai Lama, "You must hate the Chinese, the way they have treated your people." He said, "No, I have compassion," because the Dalai Lama was talking about compassion. And the young man said, "I don't believe you. I don't believe you can have compassion the way the Chinese have treated your people." And he said, "I do." And the young man said, "How?" And he said that, the actions of those people killing and raping and stealing and looting and everything they're doing, those actions are going to be reaped into the future. So they're creating an unhappy future for themselves. So I have compassion for them. So there's a feeling of compassion as well.
Compassion from you even to the people that created this kind of Hamas, ISIS, so violent crimes?
Yes. Nathaniel, I think that, when we look at our world at the moment, the violence, the hatred, all these terrible things that Hamas was demonstrating and is probably still demonstrating at the moment, sometimes I reflect, where does it all begin? What's the seed of such behavior? And my feeling is it's an unhealthy relationship with me. The first relationship in life is with me. And when there's 8 billion human beings with such an unhealthy relationship with the self, if I can't respect the self, will I respect others? If I can't respect the self, will I respect the environment? If I can't respect the self, will I really respect others who are different from me? I don't think so. And so, yes, the crimes are absolutely horrific. There's no doubt. But how can we really understand how to bring change in this world is really to bring change in the self.
With your permission now at ContentoNowTV, we'll see and visualize and we'll dig down more towards the thing that you're saying, to few testimonials, to see how the spiritual values are bridged into the practical reality here in the Middle East right now in the war.
This is a picture of me when I was 9 years old. This is Hogg. He's 9.
This is me at the age of 10 months. This is Kfir. He is 10 months old.
This is a picture of me when I was 3. This is a picture of Uriah.
This is me at the age of 2. And this is Aviv. She's 2 years old.
He's 18 years old.
Erez is 12 years old.
He was kidnapped by Hamas terrorists and taken to Gaza over a month ago.
He has been kidnapped by Hamas from his house. Today, I will be his voice.
I will be her voice.
So today I will be his voice.
I will be a hell's voice.
Today, I will be his voice. Hi, my name is Tan. My teacher calls me Tantul.
Hi, my name is Ariel. I'm a superheroes fan.
My name is Ella. The thing I love to do the most is to dance.
Jump all day long and playing with my dogs and dance like crazy.
I love surfing.
I love to run around my kibbutz, climb trees, because it makes me feel free and alive.
My favorite food is schnitzel and pasta with no sauce.
I don't like to brag, but I'm really good at solving Rubik's Cubes.
My dream is to develop my own video game.
Back home, I enjoy laying on my favorite blanket, out on the grass, gazing at the vast blue sky.
I miss those moments.
I miss my mom.
I miss the playground so much.
I really want to have a dog. I hope when I get back home I will have one.
I hope a cool car like Batman's car will come and take me, my mother and brother out of here.
I miss home. Please get me back home now.
Please, set me free.
I want to go home.
On behalf of Ohad, I am asking you, please set him free now.
Set her free now.
Set him free now.
Now. Now.
Set them free. Now.
So what is your voice, Charlie, while seeing these children? Some of them were released, some of them are still there in Gaza, so many weeks.
You know, Nathaniel, you know, those voices really spoke to my heart so deeply. And the deep, deep pain of their families and their communities and all the people that are suffering this at the moment. You know, my heart absolutely goes out to them. But how can we really deal with this in ourselves? Because sometimes the more I just fill my mind with pain and anger and hurt and resentment, what happens to me at that time? I lose all my happiness. And sometimes I feel, Nathaniel, that our minds are very powerful, our vibrations are very powerful, and they reach our loved ones. So those who are at the moment, you know, kidnapped by Hamas, the ones who are suffering and wondering whether they will get out, if our vibrations are ones of so much negativity and anger and worry and fear, it reaches those I love. Now, it's not easy because we do come under these emotions in such a powerful way. But in a sense, spirituality offers us the chance to maybe go beyond those emotions and send these feelings to those who are kidnapped at the moment, you know, to send them our love, send them our power. And that's like a form of support because they absolutely do feel it. They feel our vibrations. And so I feel that this is the power of an elevated mind, to be able to send these feelings to those who are suffering at the moment. And this is a form of support, a form of spiritual support.
Well, you're saying sending vibrations, and we're living here in the boiling Middle East. You practically means that the families, the communities can do what exactly in order to support them in the cave or in the tunnel, deep Gaza and Khan Yunis? How can it be done practically according to your perspective, Charlie?
You know, Nathaniel, there's many layers of support perhaps, and obviously, you know, we'll try to free them, all the physical things we need to do to free them from what is happening. But in a sense, self-realization or meditation is a powerful message because thoughts are instant. We can't speak to those who are kidnapped. We can't meet them. We can't console them. We can't be there to hold their hand through this incredible ordeal they're going through. But what I can do is take power from God and have these elevated thoughts and feelings because they do reach. And you know, Nathaniel, how when sometimes you think of someone and then your phone rings because the thought message has reached you. And these thought messages, this energy is a way that I can support them during their ordeal, during their trial. And I mean, what else are we going to do? If we sit and just talk and talk and talk and make ourselves more and more anxious and fearful, we can do that. And perhaps we would say that's just human nature at the moment. But if we go to our human, you know, our spiritual resources and really try to elevate myself and send those feelings, they actually do reach and they do give support.
Let's listen together. Charlie Hogg from Sydney, Australia. Brahma Kumari is one of the biggest spiritual universities in the world, to another testimonials that come from the state of Israel right now.
Home again, home again. One day I know I'll feel home again. Born again, born again. One day I know I'll feel strong again. Lift my head. Many times I've been told all this talk will make you old. Lost again, lost again. One day I know our path will cross again. Smile again, smile again.
Is there something you could say to Hila? She's 14, waiting for her mother. The family was separated. Her mother is still under the Hamas atrocities. She's back. The family is torn apart. She's separated.
No, Nathaniel, you know, once again, I really so feel for that whole family, for Hila, Ray, her mother, and what they're going through. And just to say to Hila to have absolute hope and to really think of God, remember God, her mother's a child of God. And if I can say, even feel God's light and put an orb of light around her mother. You know, physically she doesn't know where she is, and physically she can't go and bring her mother back at the moment. But spiritually, if she really feels close to God and sends these vibrations towards her mother, I think her mother will feel that support and that closeness, that incredible love of a daughter for a mother. It's a tragedy that they've been separated. It's a tragedy that the agreement to send the mother and daughter back hasn't happened. So what can we say except to offer Hila all our love and support and encourage her to really go to the Supreme Mother, if I can say, and take power from that one, because that one is the source, the only source of real power and strength at such a time.
When you're saying to take power, do you mean, because Israelis, when you're talking with them about taking powers, they're saying, okay, let's go to the army, let's fight physically with weapons, or you mean to another way of taking power and sharing that?
I was referring to another way because, Nathaniel, as you know, violence begets violence. And we feel violated, so we violate, and those who we violate will violate us. And this sort of back and forth just keeps happening, and we have the world in which we have. What I was really saying is that when I, as a spiritual being, my eternal self is the soul, and when I sort of reconnect with the one who's beyond death, this is who I am, this spiritual energy which resides in the center of the forehead, and I link to the light of the divine, there's like a power of love, a power of peace, a power of support that I receive. It's the main power I can rely on during such testing times. Because one of the big challenges, I think, is we feel hopeless. What can I do? Hila wants to get her mother back, but at the moment, what can she do? And this is where spirituality supports me emotionally, mentally, and spiritually to strengthen me to face the problems that they're facing and really learn the art of linking the mind with the one who's eternally spiritually powerful, who can give me that emotional, mental, and spiritual support during these incredibly trying times.
We'll talk a bit later on from Sydney how this art of connection can be made and implemented even in these times of war. Now, for a few more testimonials, they're coming from people that were in October 7th, and capturing scenes that we never heard before in Israel about sexual atrocities. And there are the testimonials, what happened throughout this day.
השניים שלנו היו פשוטים, היו עם ידיים מאחורי הגב קשורות, והייתה גופה אחת של אישה שהיה לה כתם של דם באיבר המין, שאני חשבתי בהתחלה שברח לה מהפחד, שראינו אותה עם משהו שזה בוודאות היה דם.
בעיקר היה שם המון פיצי ירי, גם ירי ממוקד באזור איבר מין לגברים, ראינו את זה הרבה. היה להם קטע עם איברי מין, גם לנשים וגם לגברים. אנשים שהגיעו אלינו אזרחיות, זה היה, אנחנו ראינו בעיקר או פריטות שדיים או ירי, רק בשדיים, פשוט ירי מקצה של שד לקצה השני, הם הגיעו אלינו בהכרה. אצל הגברים איבר מין, ירי באיבר מין היה להם קטע עם זה או לחתוך.
הסיטואציה שכופפו מישהי, ובעצם אני מבינה שהוא אנס אותה, הוא בעצם משנע אותה. כאילו, ממש אני זוכרת את התנועה הזאת. ואז מעבירים אותה לעוד מישהו.
היא הייתה בחיים, הבחורה שהם אנסו?
כן. היא הייתה בחיים.
עמדה על הרגליים?
היא עמדה על הרגליים, היא דיממה מהגב. אני לא יודעת מה היא הייתה. שהוא מושך לה בשיער, היה לה שיער ארוך, הוא מושך לה בשיער. הוא כאילו... היא לא לבושה, והוא חותך לה את השד. הוא זורק את זה על הכביש, הם משחקים עם זה, והיא כאילו הולכת כזה ככה עם הראש אחורה.
Thinking to yourself from Sydney, Australia, how spirituality can meet these kind of atrocities in the war here in Israel and Gaza.
You know, Nathaniel, you know, listening to those atrocities, it's such abhorrent behavior. No human being deserves to be treated in that way. And, you know, as I think there's incredible, unlimited sympathy for the victims of such abhorrent behavior. And spirituality would just say that I have to care for myself at this time, even though these abhorrent acts have been done against me. You know, they can't really harm the soul. They can harm the body, but I am the soul and I act through the body. Just like Shakespeare said, the world is a stage and we're actors. They've harmed me physically, but in the eyes of God, I'm the eternal soul. The child is the soul. And so it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. It's a trauma. It's a massive trauma that they've gone through. And yet, with God's love, many people heal from incredible trauma in their lives. And so when the real power that can help here, the real strength to give people support during such challenging times, is to really have this deep awareness of who I am and this relationship with God. And this begins to open the door to healing me and healing my, what I've been through, trying to resolve it. Listen, in saying that, I know it's not easy. I acknowledge it's not easy, but spirituality is the method to really resolve some of the most heinous crimes against human beings.
Can you, from your perspective, Charlie Hogg from Brahma Kumaris, try to explain what part of human behavior is acting like they were acting, the Hamas, ISIS terrorists?
Yes, Nathaniel, my understanding, I've been a meditator for nearly 50 years. And on that journey, it's the journey to know, experience, and love the self as a soul. The reality of life is that I'm an eternal soul and I adopt a body. But when I forget the reality that I am a soul, my nature is peace, and I begin to identify with the body, two personalities are born. The I of arrogance, the I of superiority. I develop my ego. And when my ego is ruling, internally. I compare with others. I think I am better, I know more, I am right. But when it comes into my feelings, I feel so easily insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded. All these emotions. And so my ego begins to completely deceive my thinking. And when I adopt the ego of my body based on my gender, my nationality, my religion, and I see difference, then I dislike, I reject, because the other personality is the ego of inferiority or a lack of self-respect. And when this I is ruling in my inner system, I think others are looking down at me, others don't value me, others don't love me, others don't respect me. And when this personality is ruling my inner world, I feel hopeless, inadequate, inferior, depressed. And so when I step out of the truth of who I am, my ego of superiority, ego of inferiority are born. And this convolutes my perception of everything. And out of that false identity, I have anger, I become violent, and I am so entrenched in my set of identities, all the labels of my body. And when I see someone different, I reject them completely. And unfortunately, this arrogance, shall we say, this bodily consciousness is ruling our world at the moment. Sometimes I think it's like a crisis in the soul of humanity. And when this crisis of loss of self-awareness bubbles up, it creates anger, hatred, violence. But the seed is that I've lost the truth of who I am. And until I change, the world will not change. And the Brahma Kumaris have that saying, when we change, the world will change. I personally don't think we're going to see improvement until each one of us individually begins to reconnect with my fundamental and true self as a soul.
And yet, do you recommend Israelis, families that were torn apart and suffer from this kind of violence, to feel compassion towards the terrorist attackers?
You know, it was from the perspective of what the Dalai Lama was saying, that, you know, they're doing actions which is going to create a horrible future for themselves. But, you know, in reality, at this very raw moment, this very, very tense moment, I would imagine it'd be very difficult. But, you know, I think if we were to take our mind to God, God has compassion for all souls, I would say. And when I'm really soul conscious, I have compassion. I can have compassion for those who love me and those who don't, those who respect me and those who don't. And maybe we're talking about a very elevated state of spirituality, there's no doubt. But, you know, ultimately, Nathaniel, for a good life, we've got to have good thoughts and good feelings. You know, terrible things do happen and we will be consumed by them, but we've got to step out of it and regain my life once more. Because when we do it, we're able to support the ones we love around us. When some remain really strong, then that sort of strength gives inspiration to those we love around us too. Because some of us will have to become leaders to show some sort of compassion so we can move forward.
I think that if you were talking, Charlie Hogg, from your perspective today, to the young Charlie Hogg, 40, 50 years ago, while the young Charlie Hogg was in demonstrations against the atrocities and the war of Vietnam, for instance, what would the young Charlie would have told you?
Yeah, you know, Nathaniel, I was demonstrating against the Vietnam War and the atrocities there, really, and Australia's involvement in that war. In fact, I demonstrated a lot as a young person against apartheid, against so many things. But one day I was in jail, actually. I was arrested and put in jail. And it was the 1970s. You could imagine John Lennon, and we were singing, you know, all we are saying is give peace a chance. And then we began to talk, and with all those who were arrested, many of us were arrested and put in jail for demonstrating. And I realized that we were leaders of peace, but we were such an angry, negative, and peaceless group of people. And it really dawned on me that our world will never come out of this violence, this hatred, unless some of us have the courage to connect with who we are. The natural state of the self is peace, and live in peace. What the world needs now is people who live in peace and stop the cycle of violence and hatred and rejection, because violence begets violence and hatred begets hatred. And we're caught in this cycle at the moment. And if some of us can stand up and live in peace and try to spread that feeling of peace, it starts to change the cycle which we're experiencing at the moment. So I think as that young person, you know, I'd be absolutely shocked seeing what has happened. I am shocked by what is happening. But I know that there's so many wonderful people in Israel now who need spiritual support. And that really comes when I take responsibility for who I am. And I really try to take that love from the one who can really give me love and support at that time, and that is God. My family will, of course, but God gives me this incredible internal strength to face what needs to be faced at the moment.
What made them put you in jail 50 years ago? Well, it not was just singing, all we were saying is give peace a chance by John Lennon. What were you doing at that specific moment?
Well, we were demonstrating on the university grounds, and the university, you can't be arrested. But when we left, and we were, to be honest, we were marching towards the American embassy. And then some of the students got very sort of vocal, very agitated, and quite aggressive. And then the police arrested almost all of us, the majority. And so a few hundred of us were put in jail. Oh. And yeah, so we were being aggressive and perhaps disrespectful to the police at that time too. And so we were jailed. And really, I had such a deep realization, this does not bring change that we really want. What we want to see is a human family that gives love and respect. And when there is something wrong and we deal with that by protesting with anger and rejection and hatred, it exacerbates the issue. Somehow we've got to go to a higher plane, and that's what spirituality is about, is even looking beyond perhaps the body of the perpetrators of violence and hatred, seeing the soul. And, you know, these souls, why are they behaving this way? They're traumatized. They're carrying their own trauma. Only people can do such things when they themselves have been traumatized in their own past. And so if I step up into that elevated space and, you know, see it from an elevated perspective, then perhaps I can try to understand these people and how to help them begin their own healing.
You know, the only possibility that we can here in the center of Israel in Tel Aviv conduct right here the interview is by knowing and enabling the spiritual channel to go to Israel, to the Middle East, to hundreds of channels in the world, is knowing that there is an army, an Israeli army that is right now, I think, around 1 hour and a half of driving. I've been in the border of Gaza doing a documentary a few days ago. And in Lebanon, 2 hours from here, they are defending, they are fighting, they are using the element of violence in order to prevent more terrorists to come not only to the border, but even here to Tel Aviv. So from your perspective, self-defense with an army, with weapons, is needed?
I think, you know, at the moment to restore and settle down the whole situation, I can understand that the army is required to make that happen. But hopefully, as soon as there is perhaps a resolution of the fighting, that the army will be able to pull out so that people can return to lives and start to rebuild their lives once more. But I think that the reality is, being attacked, Israel has to defend itself. It has to defend itself. But hopefully we don't overdo it where we create even further pain in the hearts of others too. And it's such a difficult time, Nathaniel, isn't it? It's so difficult. How far do they go? They're hurt. They're feeling absolutely, some of their relatives are being killed. So the army, the Israeli army, maybe has, you know, a lot of negativity as they go in there too. So, but what we're trying to say is that as many of us who really call on our spiritual resources, this is the real power that ultimately will settle us down and help us work through what has happened, these horrific events, so that we can normalize life and actually support those we love around us. And really, I'd like to say it's not easy. It's not easy, but in the long term, the only solution is truth, connecting with self, connecting with God, restoring the individual, which will restore the family and restore the community. This is, maybe the army is the short-term need, but the long-term need is spirituality.
And you know, part of the strategy of Hamas ISIS in Gaza is that they are building their weapons and keeping the hostages within the civilian population. So there's practically, technically, I would say, no other possibility in order to prevent more attacks, but to try to find the terrorists. Well, they're in Gaza, in Shifa Hospital, in Khan Yunis, they are in schools, they are in mosques. So they are using civilians as human shields.
Exactly. And this is the horrors of war. And unfortunately, Nathaniel, this is happening in too many parts of our world at the moment. And this is why I feel if we go back to the seed, you know, the relationship with the self, the relationship with the soul is absolutely damaged. And when the human race has this damaged relationship with self, it flows into my health, my family. There's so many family problems, the community, and this incredible violence against the other that I see as a threat to who I am and what I believe in. When are we going to stop this? When are we going to put a break on this sort of attitude and this thinking? And so in the short term, I sort of understand what is happening. But hopefully, once, I don't know, the leaders of Hamas are found and the Hamas, and it seems that the Israeli army is doing that at the moment, everything will settle down and we can restore as much as we can peace in our minds, peace in our hearts, peace in Israel and peace in Gaza as well. It's what we all want. The whole world wants this peace, there's no doubt.
And one of the biggest challenges of restoring is trying to restore the wounds of the children that were there, and now they are trying to come back.
When I saw those kids, when I met them at the helicopter when they arrived to Schneider's children in Israel, the look of them, the color, the impression on their face, I could almost say that I saw a shadow of a child and not a child. And this is something very extreme for me as a physician, as a mother. And I think this is exactly what he was talking about. And this is what we saw. And then you start listening and you start just listening, not asking questions, just listening to what they have to say. And they speak very, very quietly about the most terrible things that they've been undergoing. And it doesn't matter if they're 8, if they're 5, if they're 13, you hear the same, and it's horrible. It's much better to hear a child crying or shouting than a child speaking very silently.
Is there something that you can tell to doctors, therapists, mothers, when their child are coming from the tunnels of Gaza and they simply whisper?
Yeah, those poor children. But they are now in their mother's arms, and I think in time they will start to speak with more of an open heart, but they will need a lot of support to deal with that trauma. But Nathaniel, one of the things that has helped me in the Brahma Kumaris, there's sort of the understanding is an understanding of time. And that time is really connected to our consciousness. And when I am soul conscious and you are soul conscious, the human race was in a state of self-awareness, then that elevated state of mind meant a family, a community, a society of love and peace and respect. But what has happened over time is the story is that the soul forgot itself, only identified with the labels of my body. You know, I'm this and you're that. And so this body conscious ego has become so profoundly deep, and it's created this culture in our world that has informed the suffering of those poor children who were kidnapped And, you know, unfortunately, there's too much of this happening around the world. And we can keep reacting to it with further violence and further hatred and all these sorts of things. Or we can look to the self. And I feel there's a worldwide movement now, people all over the planet who realize unless I change, nothing's going to happen. And I have to really restore that soul-conscious attitude where I live in love and peace and respect. Now, that's the long-term view, perhaps, but it's the only solution to this ravaged world, which is getting worse. Most people you ask, I've traveled the world myself. I've spent time in Cambodia and places. Cambodia lost 1/3 of its population during Pol Pot. What sort of mentality was behind that? Unfortunately, it's erupting everywhere. What's the seed? The seed is the loss of truth of self and our connection with God. And this is where I feel if people give time to know who they are and they can restore peace and love in their hearts, that is the greatest gift to the people around us, the people we love. And, you know, this is, for me, just seeing these eruptions of horrific violence all over our planet. One time it's in this continent, and next time it's in that continent. What is the seed? We have to go to the seed and rebuild our truth based on our spirituality of who we are and who we belong to.
Yes, and the new seeds that are being planted between Israelis and the Palestinians are showing also the difference, not the unity, in between the young Israelis, the mothers that were released on one hand, and on the other hand, shared with the Palestinian that were released from the Israeli prison as part of the deal. And let's see it with our own eyes.
Does Israel not think that Palestinian lives are valued as highly as Israeli lives?
One big happy family. Can it be done? And you visited dozens and dozens of countries and conflicts throughout your service in Brahma Kumaris for the last 50 years. Can it be done?
What do you mean exactly? What can be done, Nathaniel?
Creating unity between the families in Israel. You saw the Israelis hugging their child while they were going out of Hamas ISIS tunnels. And the others, Palestinians, that were going outside and shouting Hamas, Allahu Akbar, Free Palestine in Arabic. It's like different vibrations, but completely different. So how unity and familiarity can be made when these seeds are planted now?
Yes, you know, I have been to Israel a few times, and once I went to a wonderful retreat center in the south of Israel. And my understanding was that the owner there used to bring young Israelis and young Palestinians together to understand each other, to meet each other and understand that actually we're not, you know, sometimes we're educated to carry feelings, negative feelings about the other because, you know, it's historically our families and our communities do. And I think that a lot of good work has been done, and you would know a lot more than that than me, but this is obviously what has happened recently has set things back enormously. But, you know, we are all souls. The human race are souls. We adopt a body. One is a Palestinian, one is an Israeli. And when we see each other through the eyes of only the body, there will carry these historical feelings, these historical hurts, this historical anger. But for me, you know, if we don't want that to continue. That's why you have this program, Netanel. It's such an amazing program. None of us want this to continue. No one in Israel, not even in Palestine. But we blame the other. So where does that end? What do we do with just this finger pointing going on forever? The only way I can see is to rise beyond it. Go back to the truth that I may be an Israeli, but I'm a soul, and you are a soul too. In fact, we are brothers. And until we restore that original consciousness of humanity, that we are one family, and learn to give respect, even if we have different belief systems, different cultures, different this, different that. But until we really restore that true spirituality, I don't see much change happening. So periodically, these things are just going to happen again and again. And the immense suffering that you've been showing me on these videos will just perpetrate. And so we're in this cycle. Who's going to break the cycle? Who's going to have the courage to stand up and say, let me be a model of love and respect, and try to change this cycle of rejection, hatred, violence. And it's not just in your part of the world, you know, it's in so many parts of the world at the moment. And even sometimes, Natalia, I think under the one roof in a family, sometimes this sort of thing is happening. It's not as physically violent, perhaps, but the hatred and the violence and the rejection. What has happened to the human spirit that we have reached this point? And that's where I think in my life, what I've done is I've spent all these years trying to know who I am, take full responsibility for each thought, and take strength from God, not to allow my mind to start to have hatred and bad feelings. And when the habits are there in all of us, I think, to have the strength to actually go beyond these feelings myself, even for those who are completely different from me, don't like the way I live. What can I do about that? Still, I try to maintain what I've learned from the Brahma Kumaris is to have good wishes and pure feelings for everyone around me. And to me, this is what changes the atmosphere and can change a family, a society, even a country.
And I deeply remember our last encounters also in India, in Mount Abu. By the way, we were talking there about wars, about atomic bomb, about, it was a few days before October 7th, and obviously meeting you here in Tel Aviv while you were visiting here in Israel. So perhaps towards the last part, the end of this meeting, Charlie Hogg from Sydney, Australia, is there any meditation that you can lead that can be reflected to the people here in Gaza, in Israel, the kidnapped families?
Yes, definitely, Natalia. And thank you. It's been lovely to be with you. And I would just like to suggest that all of us listening, if we can just put down devices and let's just be still for a few moments. And I'm going to suggest some thoughts. And let me not just listen to these thoughts, but let me try to feel them deeply. Let me begin these moments with the gentle determination to experience what is being suggested. Visualize myself as the eternal soul, a tiny light, a spark, residing in the front of the brain, in the center of the forehead. Let me begin the journey of letting go all the limited identities that I've accumulated. Just for a moment, visualize your body. Just feel like you're above your body, looking at yourself sitting in the chair. Observe your gender, your nationality, your religion, your profession. This is what my body represents, but it's not who I am. Let me feel myself moving beyond all the labels to reconnect with my eternal self, the soul. Feel yourself sitting lightly in the forehead. I am a peaceful soul. And in this sweet place of self-awareness, as a child, let me sit in front of the light of God. Visualize a radiant jewel of divine light, a pure energy, the ocean of love, a quality of love I will not get anywhere else. And as the soul, the child, allow myself to be completely loved. Just feel this pure love, this divine love, entering the core of my being. Feel this love going to my essence, healing me, restoring me, loving me. This is the energy to restore my self-respect, to restore my inner power. And if each morning I wake, before I start to think about what happened yesterday, the horrors of yesterday, the fears of tomorrow, let me revisit the awareness of who I am and my connection with the divine, so that I can face the day with love and strength, and give that love and strength to everyone close to me. Let me be an example of a peacemaker. Let me be the example of listening to the hearts, but giving them strength to face and have the courage to move forward. We can do it if we take the hand of God. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Charlie, and we truly hope that these vibrations and words will enter to the hearts of the people that will be reflected with this show, with this interview. I want to thank you so much, Charlie Hogg, Brahma Kumaris.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel. And really, I think your program is absolutely amazing. And I think just what you're doing must have an incredible effect, because you're offering people a different perspective on how to understand what they're facing. So I think it's absolutely amazing work you're doing, Netanel. I just want to express my appreciation for what you're trying to do to help the people you love and the country you love.
Thank you very, very much for the kind words. Thank you also for Sharona Stillerman, the head of Brahma Kumaris in Israel, that has enabled us to create this unique series that combines together news, war, and spirituality. And thank you all for being with us at this episode of ContentoNow TV.